we don't want to forget the faces of abortion. We've talked about mothers and fathers. We've talked about communities all suffering from the aftermath of 40 years of abortion. Our next speaker prompts each of us to ask, are we better off after 40 years of abortion in America? Georgette Forney is president of Anglicans for Life, the co-founder of the Silent No More awareness campaign begun in 2002 as an effort to raise awareness about the harm abortion does to women and to let those who are hurting from abortion know that help is available. Currently, there are 10,700 people registered with the campaign representing 67 countries. Georgette also serves on the board of directors for the Abortion Recovery International Network. She has addressed the pro-life caucus of the U.S. House of Representatives and given testimony at the Senate Commerce Subcommittee on Science, Technology, and Space hearing regarding the impact of abortion on women's health. Ms. Forney.
It is a privilege to be here among these great women and these great folks who care so much about the women who have had abortions. Over 40 years ago, women like us stood in front of the Supreme Court and they protested because women were dying from illegal abortion. So we legalized abortion. And in 2003, another group of us showed up in front of the same place. And we stood up and we said, we will be silent no more because women are still dying from legal abortion. So folks, the reality is, whether it's legal or it's illegal, abortion is bad for women. And we must face that fact. And we must be prepared to truly help women facing an unplanned pregnancy. I truly believe it's time to stop hiding behind the exploitation of reproductive rights, to honestly question whether women are better off after 40 years of legal abortion. Once abortion was legalized, it was termed safe. But it's clear from the other presentations here today that many suffer serious health consequences, as well as emotional and spiritual. In the last 18 months, 18 911 phone calls have been made from abortion clinics because women have been hurt in them. Why is that not being addressed in the public? Why is the media not addressing that question, helping these women? We also know from the recent Centers for Disease Control report on abortion statistics that we know isn't always that great, that 12 women died in 2008 alone from abortion. And since we legalized abortion in 1973, 472 women have been counted. Now there's two incredible facts that Dr. Calhoun started to point out, which is one, the CDC statistics are gathered voluntarily. But what I just learned the other day is that the person who gathers the statistics also sits on a number of pro-abortion boards and is typically a very strong proponent of abortion. So they are going to always look at those statistics and try to render them in the best light possible. And we also know that many of the women, when they die from legal abortion, their death certificate does not reflect the fact that they died from an abortion. When they go to the emergency room, abortion isn't sometimes mentioned. So we don't even know how big or how broad the death rate is for women dying from legal abortion. But it doesn't stop there. None of those numbers take into account the women who die from suicide. And it doesn't stop there either. I just recently got this report from that was produced by Mark Kretschner. You can get it on Pro-Life America. And in it, he documents 82 women that have been killed, have been murdered by their partners because they refused to have an abortion. So, if we don't die in the abortion procedure, we die because we're trying to refuse it and protect our children. And nobody is talking about this stuff. Why not? I believe, like many of us who have mentioned it, that we must also look at the next generation. I've often counseled women who have asked how or should they tell their surviving children about their abortion experience. Do we keep it a secret, or do we share that part of our history with our kids? I remember the day I had to explain to an 8-year-old little girl what an abortion was. And I'm going to share this part in her own words. Quote, "When I was 8, I was snooping around my mom's Bible while she wasn't home, and I found 4 pieces of paper that were folded up and stuffed between the pages. I unfolded them and read the first sentence. I was 16 years old when I became pregnant with Elizabeth, and I had no idea what to do. Not knowing what I had just found, I quickly shoved the papers back into the Bible and tried to forget about it. 2 nights later, it was still bothering me. My mom and dad and I were out to dinner, and in the middle of my parents' conversation, I blurted out, 'Mom, were you pregnant when you were 16? She just looked at me with tears filling her eyes. She explained to me how she had an abortion. She said something about my sister, whom she had named Elizabeth, being in heaven. At that moment, it clicked for me that I had lost a sister.' Now, I remember, this is unquote, it's back to me now. I remember at one point, as I was trying to explain my choice to this 8-year-old little girl, she interrupted me and she asked me what an abortion was. As I tried to explain that it was a process that ended the life of the baby in the womb, the look of horror on her face brought home to me what she knew instinctually, that abortion was murder, and her mommy had murdered an innocent baby. Afterwards, I remember saying to my husband that abortion proponents should be required to explain to children exactly what happens to an unborn baby during a procedure that they so firmly support as a right for women. Kids are always disgusted by the reality of abortion. You know that pedestal that kids put their parents on? The one that makes you the hero, larger than life? That day I had to tell my daughter about my abortion. I fell off that pedestal, and our relationship was permanently impacted. During this last election cycle, everyone was talking about the war on women, and it made me crazy because the war supposedly denied women access to contraception. When I think about the war on women, I think about the Tanyas. I think about the Marlas and the Christines, the casualties of war who have died. I think about the Rebeccas who have had to be told an awful truth and have been wounded. I believe abortion is the real weapon of choice. In closing, feminist author Germaine Greer also has shared about the impact of abortion on her personal life. She helps us to see past the statistics and into an experience that promised her freedom, but led only to heartbreak and loneliness. She published a book entitled The Female Eunuch in 1972 and advocated a life based on sexual license as the path to personal fulfillment. Greer practiced what she preached. As a result, she could no longer have a child because of her several abortions left her sterile and suffering from other gynecological problems. Almost 30 years later, at age 50, she wrote The Whole Woman. While not completely changing her pro-choice stance, Greer now writes, "Abortion is a sign, not of women's liberation, but of their oppression." So, after 40 years, it's clear abortion has had a huge impact on our society, although not exactly the way it was predicted. We must recognize that women Men, kids, and society are not better off after 40 years. Abortion exploits women, and that is why I am silent no more. Thank you.